close to the heart of our engagement, whilst also the ethics encouraging innovation, intelligence, and namely how to ensure so many benefits to and human AI-centered deployment, whilst also the South. So encouraging innovation to just technology that can offer so many benefits to humanity. Moderator, we have Dr. Tawfiq Jalassi, who's Assistant Director General for Communication and Information today, and who's really been a pivotal figure in UNESCO. Have Dr. Tawfiq Jalassi, who's Assistant Director General for Communication and Information, of the AI and who's really been a pivotal figure in University, and she's also a member of UNESCO's AI Ethics Experts Without Borders, who is a director of the AI Policy Lab. UNESCO's readiness assessment. She's also a member of UNESCO's readiness assessment methodology in multiple countries, and has been supporting also UNESCO's Paula Goldman, Chief Ethical and Readiness Officer at methodology in multiple countries, who are a member of UNESCO's Business Council, and also she has really been leading Paula Goldman, Chief Ethical and Humane Use Officer at Salesforce, who are a member of UNESCO's Business Council. Debjani Ghosh, a distinguished fellow, Niti Aayog, who needs no introduction here in India, a household name in India for her role in building. Debjani Ghosh, a distinguished fellow, Niti Aayog, who needs no introduction here in India, a household name, Benify, a member of the European Parliament, leading, who will share his insights on the EU AI. And finally, I'm great pleasure to welcome Brad to navigate. Benify, a member of the European Parliament, who will share his insights, a moderator, Dr. EU AI Act, and how they have been able to navigate balancing innovation and ethics. And finally, of course, I'm a moderator, Dr. Sciences Sector. Please, Maria Grazia. Maria Grazia from the...
Hello, good afternoon. So we'll try to have this session very dynamic because it's after lunch, it's Friday, over 5 days, very interesting and long. Hello, good afternoon. So we'll try to have this session very dynamic because it's after lunch, it's Friday, over 5 days. Very interesting and innovation and ethics in the age of AI. Now, nobody's perfect. Let me start by challenging the very title, which is a very complicated, what it looks like, innovation and ethics in the age of AI. Now, nobody's perfect. So, microeconometrician, understanding the dynamics of innovation looks like a root. Why I'm saying that, because of course the question of innovation, what drives innovation, how can we get understanding the dynamics of innovation that we always ask. Why I'm saying that, because by the time the question of innovation, what drives productivity, how can we get more welfare and well-being? It's something that we always and then at times we also hear this, that by the time you study what drives productivity growth, what drives welfare and dynamics. And then at times we also hear this, that like the position is constraint or having framework. So what UNESCO has actually, and the position of UNESCO has been very clear. That have adopted UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence already in 2021, which means that actually the member countries, including India, that have adopted these issues UNESCO recommendations on the ethics of artificial intelligence already in 2021, which means that what you all countries, including India, were discussing these issues already since 2019 to get to not let anything that is technologically feasible go, and how if we put that technological feasibility at the service of humanities, and not let anything that is technologically feasible go. And so for us at UNESCO, ethics of AI means technological feasibility. Actually, AI technologies, and here I would like to, and so for us at UNESCO, ethics of AI means something very concrete. It's a lot. Means AI technologies, and by here I would like to invite you to think that this technology is not one single whereas element. Perhaps when I want to think about it more, that actually abide by three human rights, that human dignities we give fundamental freedoms. Whereas perhaps when I want to develop, deploy, and use technologies in human rights, that we abide human dignity, three components and fundamental freedoms. For sure we do have. And if we technology to develop, deploy, and use technology. And why am I challenging the very topic? Because these three components, then for innovation or actually technology narrative that we use on there. And why am I challenging the very topic? Because too often we see innovation or ethical AI, which actually means that we use AI that also throughout the life cycle is ethical. Puts innovation trade-offs. And so if we innovate, it cannot be ethical AI, which actually means we don't have an AI that also throughout the life cycle is ethical. Think of a parallel trade-off. Take it from there. If we innovate, it cannot be ethical because by the time it's gone out, think if you have the time to think about. Well, one sector that is of a parallel, and then we take it from there on the concrete dynamics of AI. But think if you now, to my knowledge, but that can be my ignorance, one sector never that is very much regulated, perhaps being able to find that the regulation in that sector, now to my knowledge, but that can be my innovativeness, have never seen actually the productivity or even the remuneration in that sector. So by the same token, innovativeness and actually the pervasiveness of AI, the productivity leads us to think the pervasiveness of. So, by the same token, and actually the pervasiveness of AI to some extent leads us to think the pervasiveness of. But, you know, it's really the pervasiveness of technology that I think some of you this afternoon each and every way, each and after listening to me in many ways. And this is what I think you know, it's really the pervasiveness of technology that touches. And allow me to start each and every way, in each and every day. In many ways, and this is what I think from UNESCO we keep to discuss from different perspectives. And allow me to start with my ADG Jealousy. And as I mentioned, now, from UNESCO we keep this global perspective because the recommendation was adopted by 193 members. Now, then the question becomes what is how do we translate is to go into principles to practice. ADG Jealousy, sometimes where do you know what are the biggest gaps? But then the question that exists between going from principle into practice and what instead is happening. ADG Jealousy, where do you see what?
Thank you, Maria Grazia. Maybe before I briefly answer your question, let me say that you used the word of innovation. Thank you, Maria Grazia. I don't see personally briefly answer your question. Contradiction between the two. I see it more between innovation and regulation, because say to be creative, innovative, personally should free up issue contradiction between the two. I see it more between innovation and regulation. Because I used to be creative, innovative, should free up. And there, of course, when it was the telecom, you should not constrain them, you should not tie their hands. Data I used to be chair of the telecom operator board. But we don't want regulation that hinders mobile phones and access to private data. So I don't see the issue of regulation ethics and innovation. But we don't want regulation contradiction that hinders. To the contrary, innovation. I think here, so I don't see how is that ethics and innovation if you integrate contradiction. Ethical to the contrary, in the design reinforce each other. AI systems. How is that? Of course, because clearly, if you integrate more ethical reflection, more trustworthy, in the design and therefore more AI systems deployed. Of course, if you do that, I see ethics and innovation really more trustworthy, more used. And quite often more broadly, we say deployed. AI systems have to be ethical by ethics design. And innovation really it should be done ex ante, not quite often at UNESCO we say. Not when we see mistakes. AI systems have to be ethical by design. Impact of AI should be done ex ante. Let's go back to see what went wrong. Not when we see mistakes and hazards and risks. Are there some biases, etc. So I think it has to be done. Wait a minute. Let's go back to see what went wrong in those models. And therefore, innovation has to be a human-centric. And so I think it has to be done from there is no one-size-fits-all early stage. We know that. And therefore, what you can provide is an innovation has to be a human-centric. So it has to be a broad set of guidelines and principles, as you said, Maria Grazia. We know that. And this is what you can provide is an recommendation on the ethics of AI is about. You know that broad set of guidelines and principles, as you said, so far the only and this is what the global recommendation on the ethics of AI is about. Back in 2021, you know that this recommendation has been 93. So far the only global recommendation of its calls for human oversight, non-discrimination, respect for cultural diversity, respect for environmental sustainability, human oversight, non-discrimination, respect for cultural diversity, respect for environmental sustainability. These are the principles that need to be translated into action and that need to be operationalized within a certain context.
So, from your work at NITI Aayog and also your with NASCOM, so what are the mechanisms that can operationalize the ethical reflection? From your work into what NITI Aayog and also your experience with NASCOM, so what are the mechanisms that can really help embed the ethical reflection into what is the second?
Okay, thank you for having me here. So, first of all, I'll just go back to the topic, if I may, for a second, right? Because I do think choices between innovation and ethics. Go back to the topic. I really don't for a second, right? I think the choices between do we use technology between innovation and ethics. Everyone in the world is cancer-free. I think the choices between everyone do we use technology to ensure that do we use everyone in the world is cancer-free, a much bigger conflict zone. Everyone in the world develop the next atom bomb and worse. Do we use the technology to make the world a much bigger conflict zone? The biggest challenge we have, develop the next atom bomb and worse. The label of ethics to technology, and therefore, because I think the biggest challenge we have, and I hate can we all the wisdom in the label of ethics to technology, that we will be successful, because I think the biggest challenge we have is can we all the wisdom in this room. Can we say that we will be successful in aligning every single human on this planet? So as long as we humans don't align to the same ethical values, you will always have good actors and you will always have bad actors. So as long as we humans don't align to the same ethical values, you will always have good actors and you will always have bad actors. You know that the accountability is going to be used in ways that are non-ethical. So I think it's very important to sort of understand that, because in all our dialogues on technology, the accountability comes back to us. Somehow, right? So delegate the accountability to technology. That, because in all our dialogues on technology, maybe in another 10 years, we somehow delegate the accountability maybe to technology, not as yet, because for somebody who actually builds codes and builds agents, I know reasoning becomes a thing, maybe then, but so I think the accountability for somebody who actually builds codes and builds agents, I know they're not that intelligent as yet. Right? How does so I think the accountability on humans, I mean, one of the things I'm very clear about that, and going back to your question, regulation about is usually how does an industry ensure you develop the technology and then you say, okay, how do we now regulate it? Regulation to ensure that it's usually an afterthought. And I think that has to fundamentally change. You develop the technology, oversight and then has to be built, okay, how do we now regulate entire development to ensure that it's used right? And I think that has to fundamentally change. And it has to be built oversight with the right to be built into the entire development process, from design and development process. And it has to be built with the right, and you're able to flag off red tape the product that you are developing at every single stage to certain standards that have been developed. And you're able to, you are going to develop red tape the product that you are developing at every single stage to certain standards that have been developed, where you test out the impact. You are going to develop something, get to a stage that, and then hopefully after the entire development versus phase, there's also a sandbox where you test out the impact. You will get to a stage where ethics becomes by design versus an afterthought. And I think that's what we have to move towards.
Because you brought in the argument of the regulation that have been pushed in Europe, it's a risk base. So what was the logic and how do you see this relationship? Because relates fundamentally. She was the regulations that have been pushed in Europe, it's a risk base. So what was the logic and how we might want to put in place relates in order to have AI that is discussing as the human oversight?
Well, first of all, excuse me for the voice, but that's it. But exactly, but thanks to technology. Well, first of all, excuse me for the voice, but that's it. I think that I can also adhere to the point that innovation and ethics are not. I think that one against the other adhere to the point in fact innovation and ethics are not concentrating on impact on the action against the other diffusion is not separate from summit that is concentrating on impact, on reflection, on safety, on diffusion, protect human rights, how to make from AI human-centered. The tracks are on reflection, on safety, on how to protect human rights, how to make and how we AI human-centered. The things are to bring maybe a controversial point to the table, regulate effectively, because I have my strong conviction on this. And how we find a good balance we have chosen globally, including in Europe, a controversial point to the table, the forefront of because I have my strong conviction in one of those rooms now. We have chosen globally, including in Europe, Anu Bradford, professor of regulating in Columbia University, that has written the book The Brussels Effect. So, in fact, EU has often opened the way for many regulatory University that has written the book The Brussels Effect. So, in fact, EU has often opened the way for many regulatory looking at the social media to actually not regulate. We have let the social media diffuse even Europe without regulation. When looking at the social media, today we are discussing about regulate. We have let the social media. We heard about that also diffuse in the inaugural session without regulation. We are discussing about today. We are discussing about and limits labeling of we heard about that even Prime Minister Modi talked about that. We are discussing about but we are misinformation and after labeling of deepfakes. Even Prime Minister Modi talked about that. We have already unmodified consequences. After a lot of things I think that when we talk about when we have already if we should let the innovation flow and act only I think that when we talk about sometimes we might be wrong and risk if we should let the innovation flow and act only and so we need to sometimes we build a balance we might be wrong and innovation but also changeable effects. Human rights. So we need to challenge it. Build a balance that doesn't hinder innovation, a risk-based approach, identifying human rights where we need AI challenges. Overseen. The AI Act tried to build a risk-based approach, identifying areas where we need of justice use of AI. We want to be sure when we deal with workforce use of AI. Healthcare is a quality data, administration of justice sufficient. AI. The governance of the data is solid training and there is a quality data. These are cybersecurity sufficient. Identified. The governance of the data is solid. A few and there is human control. These are examples of what we have identified. For example, emotional recognition shows workplaces and in study places, manipulative subliminal techniques. For example, predictive policing, it's for example emotional recognition in workplaces and in study places of AI. We don't want them in our society, and we just I don't think it's keep them out. It's so a taboo. I think to choose that approach based on the risk of AI. We don't want them in our society, and we just want to modify keep them out. But it's an interesting. I think this approach based on the risk. You can choose look what you think like it in this way of you want to modify certain regulation. Interesting, and you can also promote a perspective. Because you can choose which I think is what you think is in need of trust, certain regulation, especially in democratic context. Promote it's impossible to accelerate crucial adoption of AI, which is still a big trust from both especially in democratic context. The numbers tell us that a lot accelerate of companies adoption of AI, which is still a big benefit from both the global north and the global south. The numbers tell us correct that a lot of AI of companies they are not using it because they don't know what could be the advantages or they are scared, they are worried, and so we need to correct use of AI. That also they are not using it because they don't know what could be the advantages or they are scared, they are worried. So we need to overcome that also by the help that regulation can give us.
You put forward a very important point, Brando, that is like perhaps we might not be able or we might not want to decide what the technologies are unacceptable. But for sure we might want to discuss and in this case what we do not want. This also highlights the importance of awareness because these are unacceptable. The centrality of uses or of having this human-centered approach. And in this case, and here I would like to this also highlights the conversation of awareness. As an educator, the centrality of beautiful word having this human-centered approach. You here I would like to invite Virginia in the conversation because of course you, as an educator, part of this beautiful world of educators, as a professor, people are just have this humor and the ability to interact and nurture the human capital. So what do we have to instead of to avoid that people are just what we want?
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Again, like all my previous colleagues, I want to go back to the title. Thank you very much. And I'm not going to talk about the balancing part. I'm just again, like all my claim and to be controversial and to wake up to the title. We are doing both the innovation as the ethics and regulation side. Claim and to be controversial and to wake up in the way that we are doing both the innovation side. We are doing it wrong because we are somehow we are doing it understanding innovation as the capacity on the innovation side. We are doing it wrong because we are somehow understanding innovation. And now we want to use the hammer to nail any nail that we found out. Innovation is much more than Gen AI. Innovation is really, and now we want to use the hammer to nail. And I want to go back to a sentence that has come. Innovation is much more than the main thing I'm taking from this summit today in a couple of. And I want to go back to a sentence that has come with me. And someone was the main thing I'm taking from this summit today in a couple of never experienced power cuts sessions ago. Never experienced. Someone was saying, I would like to go further. AI, and I have been working in AI for 40 years. Power cuts, never experienced before. I would like to go further. AI, and I have been working in AI for 40 years. The Cartesian tradition existing, therefore we has been developed extremely on the Western individualistic, and then equates intelligence with cognition. Therefore we have human intelligence is much more than individualistic. If you think about the AI developed intelligence in the African human intelligence is much more than we are. If you would think about AI developed, it would be for instance, in the African Ubuntu. So we do need to challenge ourselves, not to go with this hammer that it's there already and try to find the nails and call that innovation. So we do need to challenge ourselves, not to go with this hammer that is there already and try to find the nails and call that innovation. It is not innovation, it's just running around the regulation. We are also, one of those there are two things that usually come with on the side of the idea, and especially in the regulation. We are also is this kind of thing. There are two things that usually thou shall behave, thou shall idea, and especially in that regulation is about that ethics is this kind of finger that neither ethics thou shall behave, nor regulation is necessary, and that regulation is about prohibiting you to do things. Moreover, neither regulation like nor regulation is necessary. The hammer, like the telephone, is artifact. Moreover, regulation, and we can apply to regulation and like the telephone is application of ethics. Exactly the same type of principles that regulation, and we can apply to regulation and to ethics. Let's verify, let's evaluate. Exactly the same type of there, and not that we have this idea of the finger or the experiment. Let's try, let's verify, let's evaluate. Let's see what's there, and not have this idea of going back or the quickly on your answer because I don't want to take much time. I think that education needs to stay there once and forever. Start by so that's going back technology alone quickly on your answer because we really need to take much time. I think that education needs the engineers, the computer scientists, the data technology alone is not enough. So we really need to we know as engineers we know very well how the computer scientists, the data we never ask ourselves why is this a problem? We know as what are the alternatives we know very well who gains, who loses, what is gained. We never ask ourselves why is this a problem? We need to ask this problem somehow. What are the alternatives to my solution? Together, who gains, who loses, what is gained, what is lost. And in this humanities and social, we need to somehow bring that together. We need them. We need engineering because I'm an engineer, and in the to help humanities understand that we can also. We need to be much more precise. We need them. We need because I'm an engineer. AI at this moment is actually understand that doesn't mean we can also we need to be everything is AI, nothing is AI, all kinds of things are AI, the applications are AI, the sectors are AI, the technology is AI, the research, everything is AI, nothing is AI. We cannot just go around with AI, the applications are AI, the sectors are AI, the technology is AI, the research, everything is AI, and we cannot just go around with this word. We want to regulate magic. Okay, good luck. So we need the humanities, the social science. science to really help and we want to regulate precise about what are good luck. So we need the humanities, the social science to really help us being precise about what are we doing. So this is the education we need.
Because this is very easy to say. You can put it much easier to me to then ask Paula how we're doing that in companies, because this is very easy to say. We need to translate the principles, the values.
Yes, indeed. Well, first of all, thank you for that. And I mean, we were just talking about how this is our last speaking panel of the week. Yes, indeed.
That was
a
first of all,
thank you for that.
A fiery way of
drawing
we were just
things
talking
together.
About how this is our
I really
last,
appreciate it.
Kind of an energy boost
of the week. And that was a fiery way of drawing things together.
Much more practical.
I really appreciate it.
Less
kind of
abstract
than one might imagine.
I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience.
The answer is actually much more practical and much less abstract than one might imagine.
Salesforce, both
testing our products. I'll just tell you a little bit about my experience.
Our AI
so I'm
features.
I spend my days at Salesforce both testing our products and observe what's going on and know how to tweak the controls and features understand, for example, when they should set for an AI agent to escalate to a human or a human to escalate back to AI and so on.
Understand, for example, when they should set for an AI agent to escalate to a human or a human to escalate back to AI and so on.
Because clearly we don't. And we serve a variety of industries.
And when we do this
all over the world
and
so on.
We at Salesforce have all the answers because
clearly we don't.
All of our customers
and we serve a variety of industries all over the world and so on.
How do I know what kind of results I'm getting?
But everyone, all of our customers are basically asking the same questions. What are my options?
How do I know what kind of results?
What part of AI ethics is your responsibility? And what are my options?
And these questions don't necessarily have the most mature answers.
AI ethics is
we're
your
in the early innings of AI agents,
and what part is
a lot more work to do.
And these questions
don't necessarily have the most mature answers.
These are the right questions to be asking, and also allows for some flexibility and some cultural
these are the right
industry
questions to be asking
for people to find the right answers.
And
also allows for some
so that would be part one
and some
it's actually
cultural
very, very
or industry
practical
specificity for
to
people to find the
adopt
right answers to
AI.
the questions.
Companies and
so that would be
organizations
part
need
one
to be
of
able to
my
trust.
answers.
It's actually very,
they don't
very
want to be
practical
embarrassed by it.
to
right?
adopt.
And they're not going to be able to
AI.
scale it if it doesn't work.
So
Companies
that's
and
number
organizations
one. The
need to be
second
able
thing
to trust
is
that
also
it's
increasingly
they don't
what
want to
we're
be
finding when we
embarrassed
work
by
with
it,
companies
right? And they're not
this
going to be able
is
to
that the
scale
most
it if it
successful
doesn't work.
companies
So that's number one.
at scaling
The
AI
second thing
put the
is
people
also
at the center of the
increasingly what we're
transformation.
finding when we work with companies
they
on
work
this
with
is that the most successful
not just
companies
top down
at
like
scaling
you shall
AI
use this
put the people at the
application.
center of the
They
transformation.
give people a
They,
chance
they
to sort of
work
have a
with,
voice around what
not
is
just
actually
top
most
down
useful
like
to them
you shall
in the
use
day-to-day
this
work. Where is AI
application.
going to actually help
They
them?
give
Where
people a
is it
chance
kind of to sort of have a voice around
and
what
it's
is
that
actually most
kind of
useful to them in
understanding
the
of how
day-to-day
work
work.
actually
Where is
gets
AI going to
done,
actually help
what
them?
actual
Where
processes
is
are
it
gonna
kind of
benefit
useless
from that kind of
right?
application?
And
But,
it's
I
that
think
kind
is really
of understanding
important
of how work
and
actually gets
allows
done,
people to
what
sort of
actual
stay at the
processes
center
are
of
gonna
this
benefit from that kind of
large-scale
application
transformation
that,
that I think is really important and allows people to sort of stay at the center of this large-scale transformation that we're part of.
Given that let me go back to the journey because I mean in some way in a certain direction, in some ways perhaps your experience is really closest to hers. Given that you have gaps and where you see the opportunities and also the role of this multi-stakeholders type of discussion that might happen or should happen in the context where you see the opportunities and also the role of this multi-stakeholders type of discussion that might happen or should happen in the context of
well, in my current role in NITI Aayog, which is the think tank for Government of India, we're looking at what are the in my current role in NITI Aayog, which is the think tank to ensure that we can use technology to solve for some of the biggest problems, right? Now, what Professor Virginia said about AI as a hammer, I think that's a luxury of the developed countries, and I do agree with you when it comes to developed countries. Now, what Professor Virginia said, but when you come to developing countries where you don't have, I think that's a luxury of the developed countries, and I do agree with you when it comes to developed countries to use the technology. But when you come to developing countries where you don't have a lot of resources, where you're not sure of the ROI, cannot and one of the things to use the technology that takes a lot of deep investment. There were 7 working groups that sort of do things where you're not sure of the ROI. So one of the things one of the working I want to give on economic is as part of this summit. There were 7 working groups that impact, looking at different problems. Right? I chaired one of the working groups on economic development. Now, one of the things that came out was all about impact, which is one of the outcomes of this summit, and we had the creation countries participating. AI now, one of the things that came out of the working group it's online, you guys just one of the outcomes of the summit is the creation which has impact stories from more than 30 countries. It's online, you guys can counting, and it's growing every day. With learnings on what kind of problems can be solved and how do you scale it. And counting, and it's growing it's a luxury of developing countries on what kind of problems can be solved and how do you most of them are from developing countries. And why I said it's a luxury of developing with the kind of problems is because when you look at those impact stories to farmer, most of them are from developing countries. How do you lower farmer suicides by using with the kind of technology they're solving, from malnutrition, ensure that they don't suffer from climate changes and shocks. How do you lower farmer suicides by using technology so to improve yield? So I think it ensure that they don't suffer from climate changes we're solving today, and I will absolutely problems stand for that. Are so inspiring. And I think it won't be fair to say that we don't know what problems we are solving today. I'm not sure if industry today is really putting human at the center of the loop, but I think they need to. I'll go back to what they absolutely need to. I'm not sure if industry today is really putting human at the center of the loop, end goal but I think now of the apps like the end goal of AI that all the big companies are talking as we about develop technology, for example, now when you look at what does AGI mean, it's about control. Seems like the end goal of AI that all the big companies are talking about is AGI. Why don't we want to build something now when you look at what does AGI mean, it's about control. If we could change why do we want to build something to control everyone? Are at the why don't we want right to build now I think we still have a lot of work to do to bring humans back into the narrative, then I would say yes, something are at the center. We have to realize right now, I think we still have a lot of work to do. That bring humans is the only way you can build sustainable business, and it's something I think we have and that's how you sort of build your staying power. That be very important is the only way you can build sustainable businesses. And that's how you sort of build your staying power. So it's going to be very important to do.
Absolutely, in this regulation, or more generally, because I mean, at the end of the day, we also having different regulations, but regulations are part of the policy framework, the more generally, because I mean, at the end of the day, actually, let's go to Brando, because I was seeing he was kind of calling me with his eyes by the time we were talking, and I'm sure he wants to add the multilateral settlement. Please, over to you. So actually, let's go to Brando, because I was seeing he was kind of calling me with his eyes by the time we were talking, and I'm sure he wants to add the multilateral settlement.
Well, I think that it's very important that we use occasions like this summit, to I think that it's very important that we use occasions like this summit it's also advance a global part of the mission of UNESCO to unite for sure different cultures and approaches to what we are talking about. A part of the mission of UNESCO earlier to unite the long-standing work of the organization. But cultures and approaches to what we are talking about. We need to face the reality that there are the long-standing work where global cooperation. But I think that will be crucial. We need to face the reality that there are issues where global cooperation use of AI will be crucial. That it's still not sufficient. Existential risks of losing control of very powerful AI models. This is something that is existential risks, controversial debate, losing control of very powerful AI models. Dismiss renowned this is something science that is that's part of a controversial debate, we would say. But I wouldn't dismiss of globally adopted rules that sustain that we are in significant context where and this is also part of the adopted idea of balancing innovation and significant danger. For sure, this is also part of the domestic idea of balancing innovation rules and ethics. Because foster, for sure, we need the best opportunities out of the various use cases rules of AI. In these days, I met foster companies that best opportunities out of the various use cases of AI. Useful AI I met use cases to ameliorate our life, that were working to ameliorate very societal, extremely useful AI use cases to ameliorate our life. This cannot be left in the hands of societal, just the judgment of private sector companies. But this cannot be left in the hands of profit for their owners or shareholders. Judgment of private sector companies, societal good. That have a specific objective. Want to add profit for but their owners or shareholders. Objective. It's natural. Societal good. We need to have. They might want to add that on top, but that's not their. What is our it's natural impact? So we need to have and we need to build common standards in place on more broadly our adopted standards. Daily impact globally, the best will be, and we need to build common standards. But we also need more broadly adopted standards. Global cooperation on globally the best will be. We cannot actually do very much. We also need a step further that is global cooperation on those issues, and I think that we cannot actually do very much. Increase the geopolitical tension. The use of AI for peace, and I think that will be quite with an important the geopolitical tension. International community the use of AI for peace to take will be quite steps forward. I hope that which our leaders will deal with that to find a way to take. Quick steps forward. I hope that our leaders will deal with that.
My ADG can't agree more on the need to coordinate and have an approach that is global. And actually, allow me the prerogative of the moderator to call my ADG. I will take the consequences of that. What would you like to ask you? What would you like to ask you? What it means to have people at the center, and let's remember, in your case, given the work you lead on the communication, information, what is Virginia was hinting at the information. So Virginia was hinting at that. Could you please share a bit of those insights?
Thank you, Maria Gracia. Let me pick it up where Brando left it. He said AI for Brando left it. He said maybe AI for peace. Some in the room know why UNESCO was created. Some in the room know why UNESCO was created back 80 years ago, almost to the day. 80 years ago, the mission of UNESCO was and has been. The mission of UNESCO was peace and has been in the minds of man peace. In the minds of men and women. How? Through education, culture, sciences. Through education, culture, sciences, everything happens in the mindset of the people. Everything happens today. Of course, we want AI to be a force for good. We want AI to be a force for good. A force for be also hazards. A force for harm, hazard, risk. I tend to say technology is neutral. It depends what humans make out of it. It depends what humans make out of it. It could be a force for good. It could be a force for good. It could be a force for you mentioned wars. Things. So yes, humanity in the loop. That's fundamental. So yes, humanity in the loop. That's fundamental. Ask myself and ask my team. I always ask myself and ask my team. If whatever we do in the field, if whatever we do in the field, then we are. If that transforms lives, if you make the beneficiaries of our education, if you make the beneficiaries of our education, make them more successful, whatever through what you offer them, more successful. Then that's impact. Through what you offer them, where is the impact? Then that's impact. AI can transform lives. Yes. AI can transform lives. And you mentioned to us some examples. And you can help to us some cure cancers, you said. It can provide cure cancers, you said. For the needy people. Provide food for the needy people. We want that type of AI. And so on and so forth. And AI does not stand for artificial intelligence. And AI does not stand for AI stands for all inclusive. AI stands for all. That's AI as well. So if you have that perspective as well. So if you have that perspective, humanity in the loop, if you really put not only humanity in the loop, at the center, allow me 1 minute to share with you. I have been at UNESCO for 5 years. I have been at UNESCO for 5 years. My most memorable day happened last week. My most memorable day happened last week. In remote southern village, in remote village, southern people, in which people had no access to radio, in which people had no TV, no access to radio, mobile telephony, no internet, no mobile telephony. They always felt we are second-class citizens in this. They always felt we are second-class citizens. Imagine that you don't have access to information. Imagine that you don't have access to around you. You cannot call your relatives living in other cities. You cannot call your relatives living in other cities. Small communities. This was the case of 15 what UNESCO did. Small communities. It provided first community radios. It provided first community radios with transmission equipment. So through the radio, people have information. So through the radio, people have information. And when we did that, telecom operators came in. And when we did that, telecom operators came in to plug in their equipment to provide mobile connectivity. And then UNESCO put in place early warning systems put in place because these areas were very much prone to flooding. These areas were very much prone to flooding. And whenever that happened, the livelihood of the people, the cattle, the livelihood of the people, the lives of the people. That's AI can contribute in a huge way. AI can contribute in a huge way. If we put that at the center, then of course, if we put that at the center, then it has to be human-centered, it has to be ethical, it has to be accountable, transparent. It has to be accountable, transparent. All the principles that we talked about. Advocacy, capacity development, advocacy, because more informed policymakers, because more informed policymakers will go this route. Don't bring up awareness. If we don't do the advocacy and capacity building and the training, advocacy and the capacity building and the training, then some companies or some people going for the buck, companies or some people going for the buck, not the social benefit, technology, not the social benefit, not transforming lives.
Well, over to you, because even hinted that the company said yes, even hinted that the company said yes, and really how you see also really how you see also the factors including the other stakeholders and how that can transform. And how that can transform and help you deliver on AI.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. And I actually think that it becomes more and more obvious that it becomes more and more obvious that's actually the only way to scale the technology. And but you just think about if you're developing a technology that's if you're developing a technology to serve many different markets and to serve many different markets and many different populations, you need to know, for example, like we have in our AI agent, we have a voice capability. In our AI agent, we have a voice capability. That voice capability. Even if we're just talking about English, forget about other languages. Even if we're just talking about English, forget about other languages for a second. It needs to work on different vernaculars. It needs to work on different accents, etc. Different accents, etc. I work a lot on product accessibility, right? I work a lot on product accessibility, right? It needs to understand a deaf accent, and so the most inclusively designed technology is going to be the one that's most successful. It's going to increase accuracy rates. It's going to increase accuracy rates. I also think this is. I also think it's actually a very, very exciting time to be able to. It's actually a very, very exciting time to be able to use. So I mentioned, for example, product accessibility. So I mentioned one of the things that to me that's most hopeful and one of the things that to me that's most hopeful and most is that like we're starting to see AI agents like we're starting to see correct in real time. We're correct in real time. We're working correct in real time on this at Salesforce. Correct in real time a browser extension. Or correct in real time a browser extension. And something comes up and maybe and something comes up and maybe a common problem is and it breaks. It will correct it and it breaks. And these are this kind of technology is the difference between this kind of technology is the difference between someone that's able to some software to actually get their job done, some software to actually get their job done, or someone that's excluded. And so again, I guess the point that I'm trying to make is the point that I'm trying to make is the most inclusively designed technology is going to be the most inclusively designed technology is going to be the most and also this is an incredibly exciting and also this is an incredibly exciting time to be doing this work.
Very happy to hear from the voice of the industry that are actually not making a favor to those that are actually not making a favor to those that the AI, the systems, but actually the AI, and so that is something I think that's another. So that is something I think that's another common of that says no, it's costly, and perhaps says no, it's costly, and perhaps then what we are hearing from the voices of the companies is really like the voices of well, no, because it's a superior like it's a better problem. Well, no, because it's a superior problem. Last but not least, back to our. Last but not least, back to our. Especially here, I would like to listen to you. Especially here, I would like to listen what you think from you about what specific component of human capital that is a specific component of. And we have heard throughout this week the importance. And we have heard throughout this week the importance of upskill and 3D solution and to what extent. And is that really?
Thank you very much. Firstly, going back. Thank you very much. Firstly, going back to the impression that hammers are not useful. Impression that hammers are not useful. There are many useful hammers. My point is there are many useful hammers. My point point is more like we need a toolbox. And even outside of Western world, and even outside of the Western world, we are too much focused on the skills. Yes, we really need the skills. Yes, we really need to focus on our own capabilities, on our lived experience, and so on our lived experience. Someone talked about AGI. Going back, indeed, that someone talked about AGI, and indeed, at this moment, the AGI concept is about power, is providing power, is about those companies that claim they will build it. How are they building it? Is what I call the Play-Doh approach. They are putting all the data of the world. They are putting all the data of the world, capacities of the world, all the capabilities, creating a huge ball of Play-Doh, creating a huge ball of Play-Doh before you know that after you play, there is no color, there is no shape, there is nothing anymore. There is no shape, there is nothing anymore. And then, of course, that thing might, and then, of course, but no one knows what's inside what came in. But no one knows what's inside what came in. We need to go much more broader in understanding how fundamentally AGI means. Fundamentally, AGI means more intelligent system than us, that is more intelligent problems than us, that can solve problems that AGI. We already have AGI. It's called collective intelligence. The moment that we work together, the moment that we work together, we can do more than the AI technology. If we are using the AI technology to support this collaboration together, to support, to develop the different skills, to develop all our skills, to integrate all our different differences, our different experience, our different tools that we have capabilities, our different tools, then we get a much broader bouquet, not anymore bouquet, not anymore the huge bouquet of flowers of all those colors, but the huge bouquet of flowers. AGI is about AGI. We cannot let and we cannot let run away with run away by the idea that they are going to create God, by the idea that they are going to create God. AGI is about problems. Is about AGI is about us together. Is about because our collective intelligence, because our collective intelligence is really what to at the end of the day is going to solving our or to support. It's just one more thing, and I think that's also part of it's just one more thing, and I think that's also part of the skills. There I disagree with you. Is not there I disagree with you. Is technology embed all technology embed choice and encompasses our choices, our all of that our is data, part of technology. All of that we have to understand technology. We have to understand technology as a non-neutral and take those capabilities and also embrace capabilities and also embrace the different perspective and the different perspective and the different colors. Altogether, that's again only way forward. That is not only way forward and hoping that AI is going to solve and hoping that AI is going to solve whatever complex problems we have. Embracing and enforcing collective intelligence. That is AGI.
And now we are going now have a collective intelligence, and now we are just to have a collective time doesn't allow questions, just a couple. So because the time please, by the time you want to intervene, so please, by the time you want to intervene, say your name, say whom you want to ask the question, say whom you want to ask the question without doing the history, and the question without doing the history of humankind before starting. I have to say, I spotted that, sir, first. I have to say, I spotted that, sir. Now I think she got shy. Now I think she got shy. So let's start by just put the hand down. No, so let's start by that gentleman. No, it's the gentleman behind it. I'm sorry. He's there. He's there. I can do everything from moderating to give you the background. I can do everything from moderating to give you the background. All service to you. Let's go. All service to you. We are proactive and problem solving. Let's go. We are proactive and problem solving. Let's go. Your name is? Push the button. Push the button. Yes.
Hello everyone, myself Rajan. I'm from Business Club TV. Myself Rajan. I'm from Business Club TV. I'm the founder of the. And I'm the CEO and the founder of the. So I have a very basic question. I have a very basic questions for Professor Virginia. Professor Virginia Dignam. So Professor, I have a question for you. So Professor, I have a question for you. What is AI policy?
Wow. Okay, I'm
3 hours. 3 hours.
Okay, very shortly. AI policy is about the capabilities, the skills, the information, the knowledge, the understanding how to address the impact of AI. Not the technology, not the designing of the technology, not the designing of the technology, but really addressing from the whole loop, the whole development, from the beginning, asking ourselves why are we using AI? Why are we using AI? Is that the best? To the way we are developing it, to the way we are developing it, evaluating and addressing the impact of it.
No, I'm sorry, because we have to give it. Let's be inclusive. Let's allow the others to speak as well. Let's allow the others to speak as well. Please, that lady, yes, exactly. It's just down here, three rows ahead. It's just down here. I'm going to be gender equal. So I'm going to be gender to have the men speak because typically you're not going to have the men speak because typically you're the first one to raise your hand.
I love that. Thank you for that. I love that. Hi, my name is Rita Soni. I don't know who. Hi, my name is Rita Soni. I don't know who. At the beginning of this panel, I heard the beginning of this panel, I heard those that are developing AI, those that are developing AI and designing power cut, or probably never experienced a power cut. I thought that there would be more discussion. About actually involved is actually involved in the humans in the loop. So I have to ask this question about. So I have to ask this question developing it and whether people that are actually developing it and whether responsibly employing them. Right now, we know that there's over 500,000 people. Right now, we know that there's over 500,000 people in the world. They've typically been excluded, but now they typically been excluded. How do we support this as a movement? So how do we support this as a movement of getting power cuts to those that have experienced power cuts to help design and develop?
This is a development-related question. Who wants to? This is a development. Because we are over. That's the last question. Because we are over. That's the last question. Continue the conversation. We will have to say thank you.
If you're talking about have developers, if you're talking about have developers develop the technology, power cuts, develop the technology, power cuts, anyone who's working out of Bangalore or any Indian they've definitely suffered in the development. They've definitely suffered in the development. I think Rita, the point you were making is how do we make it more inclusive? And I think that's something that goes back to the perennial question. That goes back to the perennial question. That is how do you democratize not just access to technology, but you also democratize technology, but you also democratize design and it's not just technology, right? It's also how do you diffuse it down to smaller cities, so people who are actually facing the problems in smaller cities. And I think at least in India we are doing that. And I think at least in India we are doing like Startup India, through our initiatives like Startup India, etc., which is building capabilities in tier 2, tier 3 cities, not users, tier 3 cities, not users, but actually for design and development. But actually there's a design and development. So there's a lot of focus, and I'm sure there are founders here who have come from the smallest of cities. And the best part is when we track the numbers, the best part is when we track startups and founders, the growth is higher in the tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities than in tier 1 cities. So that tells us than in tier 1 cities. So that tells us we're doing something right.
If you have like half of as much I have enjoyed this panel, like half of as much I have enjoyed this panel. Please join me in thanking Yes, we stand like this. Yes, we stand like this. This is our collective intelligence. We are all together. This is our collective intelligence. There we go. Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you. Where's my face? Thanks. So we have to stay a second.
panel. Please join.